Hi, this is Anton Joseph with the Strivecast here, Calgary, Alberta, and I have the good fortune of having Brianna Salverda, actually a former athlete of mine, here to talk about working on getting involved with colleges and universities down in the United States, as well as being in a situation talking about her experiences and some of the things that she's gone through to get involved in terms of college athletics, including going through the SAT and all that good stuff. So welcome, Brianna.
Hi, good to be here.
Well, first of all, tell me a little bit about yourself in terms of your sport, and obviously I know, but some of the individuals that are tuning in.
So I started training when I was about 12 with Anton, but I've been playing soccer my whole life. I kind of decided when I was at a pretty young age that I wanted to go play NCAA soccer. So that was the main goal. And so it's just a little bit about the process of getting there. And Anton you were a huge role in helping me get there and Strive and the training. But it's quite a process getting there with any sport, the recruiting. So it's pretty intensive, I guess. And there's a lot of just minor things to go through.
So you mentioned you started training when you were 12 years old. Was that the basic first component in terms of getting involved in and getting prepared to go down?
I would say so, yeah. Prior to that, I was playing and I loved soccer, but I think that was the first step in realizing how seriously I wanted to take it and that it was something I wanted to pursue and try and get to the highest level I could at. So I think that was kind of got the ball rolling of all the steps I took next to try and get there.
Okay, well, tell me about some of the nitty gritty as it relates to the school side of things. What you had to do in high school in order to set yourself up on that path.
So in high school, of course, it's keeping your grades at a level that will get you into university. So in addition to all your coursework and stuff, as most people know, and the US schools require an SAT or an ACT score. So on top of your regular school, you have to go through the process of studying and preparing for that as well. So that was kind of an additional part. Everything happens pretty quick there for college recruiting too. So you have to make sure your grades are looking good at earlier years, like grade 11, when they're going to start recruiting you, and that you have your SATs done at an earlier time as well.
What grade did you do your SATs in?
I wrote my first one when I was in grade 11.
Okay. And just so our viewers know, you can write your SATs as many times as you want, and a low score won't necessarily count against you if you rewrite the test, right?
Yeah,
How many times did you write?
I wrote it twice,
Okay.
but I would certainly suggest writing it more than once. Honestly, they don't usually penalize you for that. Most of the time they take your highest score. Some schools even take the highest sections of each test and combine them that way. So I would honestly suggest writing it more than once because the first time is always a little new and it's tough to get the timing down. And I think you can only go up from your first one.
What about the in terms of studying and how did you prepare as it relates to getting ready for the actual SAT?
I was fortunate to be a part of a program in high school called the National Sport Academy. And that was a program where we had soccer training or weight training or in classroom training every day while we were in school. It was one of our classes. And part of that was prepping for university. So they offered after school for an SAT prep course. So I was fortunate enough to get to prep with other student athletes that had a common goal, as well as a teacher and some coaches that had been through it and knew a lot about the SAT. So we went through the practice book that way. And then I'd go home and kind of work some of the problems on my own as well.
Okay, when you took the test, how long of a test was it and how involved was it?
It's 4 hours when I took it. It was pretty involved. It's just the timing you have to get down and kind of, it's different than most tests. Most tests, they'll tell you to guess if you don't know the answer and just guess and go for it. The SAT, it's actually better if you really don't know to sometimes not answer a question at all because then you don't lose any points. So it's kind of a tricky situation where you have to pick and choose which questions you think you should and shouldn't answer in that sense. So I think a lot of the preparation is learning when you should make those decisions and those calls.
Okay. And then tell me a little bit about the process of getting recruited down to a school in the U.S. I had the good fortune of being in a situation where I was able to play football down there, but I was an older student going down. How was your experience in terms of identifying colleges, universities, and then getting ultimately recruited?
So I was trying to do this while I was in high school, and how for soccer, how it works is there's showcase tournaments the U.S. puts on, and you go to these tournaments with your team, and you basically college scouts come and watch them. They're there watching on the sidelines to see if they have any players they'd like to recruit. But on top of that, what I would do, so my team didn't. We did some showcase, but I wanted to do a few more, so I found a team to guest play with. Paul Schultz, the coach of the National Sport Academy, set me up with a coach from a team that puts a team together in the U.S. that I was able to go on showcase. And prior to each tournament I went on, they release a list of the teams and the schools that are going to be there. So I would identify some of the ones that I might have been interested in going to, and I would send an email to the coaches in advance with my player profile and cover letter so that they would be aware of me going in, and hopefully when they come to my game, they already have that in mind and they have my name in mind to look for.
Well, with that, ultimately, is that how you were recruited to your university that you went to?
Yeah, so I was actually recruited pretty late compared to how most schools do it. I was at a tournament in Texas my grade 12 year, which it happens over the American Thanksgiving weekend. And the assistant coach of the school I went to, he had seen me play at that tournament. And then I went to another tournament over Christmas break down in Florida called the Disney Showcase. And I played there. And then the assistant coach and the head coach both saw me play at that tournament and ultimately contacted me following that, offering me my scholarship.
And that was in your grade 12 year.
That was in my grade 12 year, which is very, very late. Most would have committed by then, and most schools don't have spots at that point. I was very fortunate that they did have a spot open up, and they were looking for someone in my position to fill it. So I was very, very fortunate in that sense. I would not suggest waiting that long to lock it in.
Mm-hmm. And with that, what was the process from that point?
So from that point, I was talking to a few schools at that point. So it was a decision-making process. I had a couple schools that I was interested in and had been offered scholarships. So what I did was official visits. And official visits are where you get to fly down and the school and the team pays for everything. They pay for your flight. You stay usually with someone on the team, do activities with them, go watch the team practice. If they have games, you'll do that. And they're just and then they'll give you campus tours. You'll meet some of the teachers that might be in the department you're interested in. So I did 2 trips within 1 week, 2 of my official visits, and kind of went to those schools and decided from that point. You're allowed to do up to 5. So if you're talking to more than 5 schools, you kind of have to narrow it down to your top 5 there. But I was fortunate to flow down. And then when I came back, talked it out, thought about how I felt about both schools and made a decision from there.
With that, as a Canadian going down, what things did you have to do in order to qualify? For example, when I went, there was a student visa called an I-20 that I would have to apply for and receive so that I would be able to go to school and go across the border. Did you do something similar in terms of the paperwork and everything once you were accepted to school?
Yeah, it is still an I-20. That is the same visa that I had to get as well. So once I'm accepted, the tricky part with it is we finish high school a lot later than students in the US do. So my team, they all went down for a fitness month in July, and I couldn't go because our final grades here in Alberta aren't released until end of July, around that July 20th or so. They cannot actually issue you your I-20 until you have been officially accepted, and you can't be officially accepted until they have your final transcripts. So it was all actually very delayed. I didn't get my I-20 until about a couple days before I was supposed to be there because of that process. I was fortunate that my coaches helped me out a lot with that. They kind of walked me through all the applications I had to do online and where to go. And then there's a fee you have to pay every time you renew your I-20 or get a new one. So you get one and it's good for your entire degree. Once you finish that degree, or if you need more time on that degree, like let's say you don't finish in the 4 years they allot you and you need a 5th year, you usually have to pay another fee. It's called a SEVIS fee, and it's just a fee you have to pay to be able to get your I-20 and then renew it every time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So tell me about your first year down in the States, and what school did you ultimately decide to go to?
So I ultimately decided to go to Jacksonville State in Alabama. It's a D1 school there, not to be confused with in Florida. Everybody always thinks that. I would say my first year, I loved it overall, my whole experience there. My first year, the first couple of weeks were probably the hardest part. I got there in August because we have preseason.
Hmm.
So I had to be there for training, and the whole team had been there for a month prior to me getting there. So I felt I was late. I was learning. I knew nobody going down there. And now all of a sudden I'm being thrown into this atmosphere of having practice twice a day and fitness tests and the added stress of that. So the first few weeks were definitely a big adjustment, especially coming straight out of high school where I wasn't used to not living at home. So it's a little scary, but you find for sports at least you get so close with your teammates and they help you adjust that way. Once school started, you get in such a routine with it because you have such a strict schedule between your sport and your schoolwork. You don't really have time to do much else. So your time management is super important. But I would say overall that made the experience better. If anything, it forced me to be more disciplined and helped me be more successful in school, I think, having soccer, because I had this added level of commitment and this mandatory GPA I had to maintain.
Hmm. Hmm. What with that? What were some of the perks of going down to the United States, in your opinion, and maybe some of the things that were a little bit more challenging?
Um, Perks, I would say, from an athletic standpoint, there's no atmosphere quite like it. People down there go crazy for college sports. And so getting to play in front of crowds and also just going to football games and other sports teams and the level of support that is experienced there is just, it's so much fun. It's such a cool experience to get to see how excited people are for that. And then just the competitiveness of it. And I loved having the training all the time. I thought it made it that much better and more intense and competitive. So I think from that standpoint, it's great. And it also takes you away from home. So it gave me that level of independence at a younger age, I felt like. Some of the downfalls I would say is, well, sometimes you get a little homesick for sure. So it's a little bit away. And then you just have to be careful when you go to school in the US. You need to be careful about which courses you're taking, what degrees you're doing, and stuff. If you are planning to come back to Canada, you just want to be, it's not to say that they won't transfer. A lot of them do, but you need to be conscious of what you're taking. And that needs to be in the back of your mind all the time to make sure that if you want to do a grad program in Canada, or you need to take some extra courses or things like that, that all of this lines up, or you have the documentation that if somebody asked if this is equal or of equal level, you would be able to produce that.
Hmm. With that, did you end up staying down there for a little bit longer?
I did, yeah. So I finished my fourth year of soccer, and then I ended up doing my master's down there as well. So I wasn't playing soccer at that point, so it was a different experience because I didn't have any eligibility left. So I was just focusing on school primarily and getting to try some things, I guess, that I did not always have the time to do when I was playing. And I got back last December, so I've been back for about a year now.
Now, what would you tell a soccer player, football player, an athlete going down, words of wisdom or advice when looking at U.S. college or university?
Um, I would say start early would be my biggest thing. If they are considering going to the States, they need to start looking now. It's never too early to start looking with them because they are recruiting players. Some teams will have their classes almost closed out for the next 2 or 3 years. So I think start early would be my number one advice. And then do your homework. You need to study up on which schools you actually want to go to, which offer the program you would like. Would you enjoy this atmosphere? Would you be able to live there? And then once you narrow it down, it's about being forward with it. So waiting for them to come to you is not going to be a good game, especially with some sports like football, because the US is known for football. They have a ton of football players there. So unless you give them a reason to look at you, they're not going to look outside of where their area. So I would say if you're forward and put yourself out there, contact them, send them video, and give them a reason to take notice, you'd be successful in getting down there.
Okay. Well, thank you, Brianna, for taking the time to meet with us and give us a little bit of background on what it takes to play college athletics and to get recruited as a Canadian. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.